Christine had noticed that things were changing at the Grange. Every day, if there wasn't fog or rain, she had a good peer through her window at the happenings. She saw a local gardener cutting the grass once, other than that she saw no evidence that there were people living in Blackfriars. But there were definite changes. Repairs had been made, and she had seen a painter and decorator's van leaving the lane once, as she was on her way back from a business meeting in Manchester. Christine had a pair of opera glasses that she had liberated from a theatre in London, and had no shame in standing for long periods of time trying to see into the house. She would often sit for an hour, watching while eating a plateful of jam sandwiches and drinking a bottle of wine. The walls upstairs had definitely been painted a rich red. Very nice. The woodwork looked to be polished rather than painted wood. Downstairs was harder to see, as she was higher than the house, but she thought that the walls were painted dark too. Maybe a racing green, she thought. She was still desperate to get a look inside and to meet the owner. She hoped they didn't have children. She hated them. They would be going up and down the lane on their bicycles, being cheeky. She liked to sunbathe in a tiny bikini in the summer, and she wasn't a small woman. She wouldn't be able to do that if there were children about. One morning, she heard the letterbox go, and then surprisingly saw Wayne, the postman, going past her back window towards the Grange. She rushed towards her back door and flung it open in the fog. "Wayne, darling, could I see you a moment?" She saw him stop mid-step and drop his head slightly. She thought she heard him mumble something, and he turned around and started walking back towards her, with a professional smile on his face. "Miss Baker," he said, "I've told you before, darling, you are to call me Christine. We are friends, aren't we?" Wayne couldn't think of anyone less he would like to call his friend as Christine. She was not his type of person, and she was a complete annoyance, and she got too much post. He thought that the least you could do if you lived this far up the hill was make sure you didn't get much post. "Do you have a letter for the Grange?" she asked. "Electricity," he said. Probably best to keep dialogue to a minimum. "Could I ask you the teeniest favour? Could I ask that you give me that letter, and I will say that it got delivered to my house by mistake? I would really like to get to know the owners." "I'd better not, Miss Baker." "Christine." "Christine," he paused. "I could get into a lot of trouble if anyone found out." "No one will know, Wayne. I was thinking, one time maybe you would like to come in for a little drinky after your round. It gets very lonely up here." He looked at her, his eyes big and round. "I could get into trouble for that as well. Here's the letter." He shoved it in her hand and made a quick getaway. She shouted after him, "Don't forget to call in a couple of weeks for your Christmas box. Chrissy might have something special in her stocking for you. Compliments of the season, if you know what I mean." She thought she heard him say, "I'd rather do without," but it was probably the fog muffling his words. She looked down at the letter in her hands. It was indeed a letter about the electricity supply, addressed to Mr. Norman Morgan. There didn't seem to be a Mrs. Norman's name on the letter. Maybe she would be in the Grange after all. She had to go out to a hospital check-up in the afternoon, and by the time she had got in and made herself very presentable, it was 5:30, and it had been dark for over an hour. She took a last look at herself in her mirror, and decided to add an extra layer of her favourite red lipstick and dangly earrings. Christine liked what she saw, but as an afterthought, she decided to undo another couple of buttons on her blouse. Once she had found her big torch, which she used for her cellar, she set off with the letter down the bank. Pleased to see that the gate was unchained, she opened it with a loud squeal of its metal hinges. They'd not seen to that yet, she thought. Christine walked up the drive. A large Mercedes was parked behind the boundary wall, which she could not see from her house. There were curtains up at the windows now, at least downstairs. They looked expensive with a heavy lining. Not a chink of light came through. There was, however, a square of stained glass in the front door, and its light shone down onto the drive in a large oblong. She thought this was new. Christine stood for a moment and took a good look around the garden, a Mercedes parked in the drive of a great house. They were asking for trouble. She would have had a security light here. But no such light came on as she walked up the 3 stone steps to the door. She thought she saw something move quickly from the roof to the ground, at the right side of the house, and hide around the corner. That was strange. She looked again from where she stood, without moving, and stared at the corner. Well, it had gone now, she thought. But this was even more reason to have a security light. There was a large knocker on the door, and she knocked 3 times. She waited, but no one answered, so she tried again. Just as she had finished the 3rd knock, the door was quickly flung open, and a handsome man stood facing her. She would say he was in his 50s. Obviously wealthy as he was, very well groomed, and his clothes were immaculate and were made to measure. He didn't speak, he just looked at her. She couldn't tell if he was angry for her disturbance or happy to see her. He was totally expressionless. "Hello, darling," she gushed. No reply. "I live in the house just up the lane, and I have a letter of yours that has been delivered to my house by mistake by that stupid postman." Backstabber, she thought. But she quickly dismissed it. "I'm sorry, how rude of me. I was quite taken aback by your arrival. I am Norman Morgan." "Christine Baker," she said, and stretched out her hand. She gave her very best, wide smile. He looked at her for a moment, then took her hand in its greeting and smiled widely too. She noticed he did not smile with his eyes, just his mouth. His lips and gums and tongue were very red. Maybe he had just been eating beetroot. "Please come in, Miss Baker. Is it Miss? I'm sorry to presume." "It is Miss, for the moment, Norman. Can I call you Norman? You can call me Christine. We are neighbours, after all." She fluttered her eyelashes at him. He had seen a film a while back that reminded him of this woman. Whatever happened to baby Jane, she could prove very useful to him. He would keep her alive until it suited him for her not to be so. She walked into the large hallway with its sweeping staircase and black and white tiles. Norman gestured left, and she went into his sitting room. Racing green it was, with dark wood furniture and expensive sofas. "Take a seat. Would you like some refreshments?" "If you are offering, it would be rude not to, wouldn't it?" She giggled. "Would you like some English tea or wine or something else, Christine?" "A glass of red, if you have it, Norman." "Of course. Red. I only serve red." He left the room, and Christine looked carefully at her surroundings. The floor was highly polished wood, with expensive Persian rugs on it. The walls were painted, and so was the ceiling, but the magnificent work on the ceiling was clearly remaining from when the Friars had lived here. Norman returned. "I see you are admiring my ceiling, Christine." "It's very impressive, Norman. I would never have known there was such a beautiful house hiding behind those big walls and grass a few months ago." "Ah, a beautiful house is like a beautiful woman. It just needs care and love to blossom." "He's coming on to me," she thought. "It's in the bag." He handed her a cut crystal glass of red wine. "From my own vineyards in Switzerland," he proudly said. "You might think I'm ignorant, Norman, but I didn't know they made wine in Switzerland. I know I've never had any." "No, Christine, I do not think that. The Swiss are very clever people. Their wine is so good, they keep it all for themselves." "Oh, Norman, I can see we're going to get on. That's my philosophy as well." His mouth really was so red. He must be drinking too much of his red wine, she thought. "I am delighted that you came to visit me, Christine, as I was shortly coming to visit you. You see, I was going to invite you to a party." "A party? I love parties, Norman. I'm a very popular lady. Say no more. Do you need any help?" "I could do with a little help in one area, Christine." "Fire away, Norman." She took another sip of the wine. She could tell he was foreign, but he spoke English very well. Probably better than a lot of people that were actually born around here, she thought snootily. "I've been abroad for a long time. I lived in the land of my ancestors. But I decided that, as I got older, this was not for me. My businesses do not require me to be there, and I have skillful workers, so I have been looking for a place I can retire to, a place I can make my own. I travelled to many countries and have not felt welcome, but here, on this island of Great Britain, I think I have found everything I need. I have visited a few villages, especially in the north, but not stopped for a while. I had an extended stay just over the hill in Yorkshire and made a few friends. However, for certain reasons that I cannot explain, I was drawn to here, to Saddleworth, and then on to Friarmere, to the remoteness and the wildness and the hills. It reminds me somewhat of my own country, so I've found this comfortable house and want to integrate into the community, so to speak. I have learned of a festival of Guy Fawkes that is happening soon, is that right?
Oh, yes. Bonfire night. It's this Saturday. Norman refilled Christine's glass. I have some entertainments coming. I have organised for your local brass band, Friarmere Band, to attend and play. I'm looking forward to having them. I came across them just by chance too. He paused and took a drink from his own glass of wine. And I have lots of fireworks. I have invited some people that I'm very interested in meeting, local celebrities and such, but I just have one problem.
What's that?
Food. I do not know what you people eat for this festival, or do you not eat anything special on this day? Food and festivals are very particular where I was born. You've come to the right person, Norman. Meat and potato pie, red cabbage, black peas, jacket spuds, parking. Maybe we could get some of your wine and mullet. Mullet? What is that? You mean like the 80s hairstyle? The footballers, they had it. What? Oh no, not mullet, not a hairstyle, mulled wine. I still do not know. Spices and oranges and stuff. Ah, like the glühwein. Yes, that's it. I know where to get all that from. I'll sort it. I'll just give you the receipt. Thank you, Christine, but I just need the list, and I will sort it myself. I have troubled you enough. I have workers here in England too. I would like to add my own twist to this food, you see. I just have more thing to ask. Yes? What is a black pea?